Africa Awake TV.
Examples of pre-colonial African literature can be traced back to at least the 4th century AD. The best known is the Kebra Nagast, or Book of Kings. A common theme during the colonial period is a slave narrative, often written in English or French for Western audiences. Among the first pieces of African literature to receive significant worldwide critical acclaims was Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. Published in 1958, African literature in the late colonial period increasingly featured themes of liberation and independence. Post-colonial literature has become increasingly diverse, with some writers returning to their native languages. Common themes include the clash between past and present, tradition and modernity, self and community, as well as politics and development. On the whole, female writers are today far better represented in African literature than they were prior to independence. The internet has also changed the landscape of African literature, leading to the rise of digital reading and publishing platforms such as Okada Books. Things Fall Apart is a debut novel by Mr. Chinua Achebe, born Albert Chinua Achebe, on 16 November 1930. He died on the 31st of March 2013. He was a Nigerian novelist, poet, and critic who is regarded as a central figure of modern African literature. His first novel and magnum opus, Things Fall Apart, 1958, occupies a pivotal place in African literature and remains the most widely studied, translated, and read African novel. Along with Things Fall Apart, He's No Longer at Ease, 1960, and Arrow of God, 1964, complete the African trilogy. Later novels include A Man of the People, 1966, and Ants Hills of the Savannah, 1987. In the West, Achebe is often referred to as the father of the African literature, although he vigorously rejected the characterization. Things Fall Apart was first published in 1958. It depicts pre-colonial life in Igbo land, that's modern-day southeastern Nigeria, and the invasion by Europeans during the late 19th century. It is seen as the archetypal modern African novel in English, and one of the first to achieve global critical acclaim. It is a staple book in schools throughout Africa and is widely read and studied in English-speaking countries around the world. The novel was first published in the United Kingdom in 1958 by William Heinemann Limited and became the first work published in the Heinemann's African Writers series. The novel follows the life of Okonkwo, an influential leader of the fictional Igbo clan of Umuofia, who is, among other things, a feared warrior and a local wrestling champion. The work is split into 3 parts, with the first describing his family, personal history, his violent exterior and tortured soul, and the customs and society of the Igbo. The second and third sections introduce the influence of European colonialism and Christian missionaries on Okonkwo, his family, and the wider Igbo community. Things Fall Apart was followed by a sequel, No Longer at Ease, 1960, originally written as the second part of a larger work along with Arrow of God, 1964. Achebe states that his 2 later novels, A Man of the People, 1966, and Ants Hills of the Savannah, 1987, while not featuring Okonkwo's descendants, are spiritual successors to the previous novels in chronicling African history. Mr. Chinua Achebe portrays Okonkwo in the novel as a famous wrestling champion in the villages of Umuofia. He believes African society has been irrevocably changed by the colonial era. Achebe chooses to write in English and use Western forms of literary expression, unlike other African writers who reject the colonizers' language, for instance, English and French, and other vestiges of colonial influence. I think it was because he needed to sell his work out of Africa, given that Africans weren't that educated or ready to buy and read. What is more important is a message he tried to pass on. According to Achebe, Conrad refuses to follow human expression on Africans, even depriving them of language. Africa itself is rendered as a foil to Europe, as a place of negations, at once remote and vaguely familiar, in comparison with which Europe's own state of spiritual grace will be manifest. They believe that African literature is so big that we can't understand it completely. Achebe himself argues that you cannot cram African literature into a small, neat definition. I do not see African literature as one unit, but as a group of associated units. In fact, the sum total of all the national and ethnic literatures of Africa. African literature is so big that we will be digging into it gradually. And I believe this is a topic that it is very important that we start curtailing, we start unveiling to the grand public. Because when we talk of African literature, we talk of our history, we talk of our identity, we talk of our originality. So me, I'll be focusing also into the African literature as part of our history. If you are a writer or someone who aspires to enter into writing from the African narrative and African historical literature as a whole, then this is where you should be. My African series will encompass all the fields of our history, literature, science, invention, trade and market, and more. Just make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Africa Awake TV, Facebook page, Novelist Versor, author, TikTok at Novelist Versor. I'll be posting my videos on our YouTube channel, on my Facebook page, and on TikTok. Until next time, thank you for watching. It is me, your host, Novelist Versor.